native plant combination I want to recommend is Partridge Pea and Gaura. Now, I don't know the native range of the Gaura because I don't know exactly which species of Gaura I have because it was in a southeastern native mix, but I can give you the native range for the Partridge Pea, and that is on the screen right now. What I love about these two plants in a combination is that they're both pretty wispy, and yet they're both different enough, and they have different textures and things happening. One thing I really love about this mixture is that they have like fall and winter interest, especially fall interest, and so in the fall, the Gaura turns sort of a red color on the stems, and it kind of creates this beautiful haze of red, and I love it. I love it so much. But during late summer, it's just blooming really beautifully, and it's like a haze of white. It's very wispy. I kind of call it like a fairy flower because they kind of look like little fairies dancing in the wind. And the stems can really get long and very, very wispy, like I said. Another cool thing is that partridge pea does get little pea pods on it, and it creates these little pods that turn into the seeds. And if you want to see the seeds, you can see them right here. It's such a cool thing because you can crinkle them in your hand. Like you can crinkle the pod in your hand when it's dried out, and it makes such a cool sound, and it kind of like shoots open. I love it. I think it's so cool. Now, what I'll say about partridge pea is it's one of those plants where you don't just plant 1, 2, or even 3. No, partridge pea needs to be planted in a huge mass or drift, not a small drift. Not a 3 and a 5 and a whatever. It needs to be a lot of plants. So it was perfect for a native plant mix. Now, I wouldn't recommend only having partridge pea and Gaura. I think that you could add other plants to this mix, to this combo. I just really like them together in addition to other prairie type plants. So purple coneflower is a great one to add with it. Butterfly weed is another great one to add with them. And lanceleaf coreopsis is also a wonderful plant to put with these. Then you'll get a lot of blooms across the different times of summer, early summer all the way to late summer. And lanceleaf coreopsis is probably the earliest out of all of those to bloom. And I just think they're just gorgeous together. And for reference, all of these plants are growing in my full sun garden, and I have a lot of clay, but it is well-draining clay. These plants are tough. These two plants are extremely tough, and they are in probably the hottest part of my garden. This specific area gets over 6 hours of sun a day, probably 8+ hours of sun a day, and when it's summertime, and it's in a raised bed, and a raised bed can already be pretty well draining. And so you can imagine how hot it gets up here, and then you mix that with the fact that my house is white and it reflects a lot of heat off of it back onto the garden, and they're right up against the house. This is a raised bed right up against my foundation. So if you want some tough summer heat-loving plants that are native, Gaura and partridge pea are great options for you. Gaura will create this beautiful mass of little tiny white flowers, and it's not going to look like big blooms. They're tiny blooms, but it's a nice, like I said, like little fairies dancing in your garden or something. And so it's beautiful. And then the partridge pea is it's such a happy yellow. It's bright. And when you plant enough of it, it's just a gorgeous mass of sunshine, really. It just creates this sunshine effect. Another thing you want to know about partridge pea is that once it does create seed pods in late summer, early fall, those seed pods will fall all over the place underneath of them. So if you don't like mess, you might not like that. I actually think it's kind of cool. I kind of like when things fall off of a plant and create like a I don't know, what do you call it? Like a little bit of a litter underneath of them, especially if it's like a pretty color, like a deep red or brown color instead of like a vibrant brown instead of like just gray brown, if that makes sense. Like, a lot of stems in the winter are kind of like this gray brown and stuff like that, but when this first drops, now granted over the winter it will kind of like get more of a dull color, but when it first drops it's really pretty. I know, it's an aesthetic that I like, but I know a lot of other people won't like it. And I will say, it's really easy to sweep up if it falls onto your concrete patio, for example, or in my case, my main path, which is also concrete. It's super easy to sweep off of that, so it's not a big deal. And if it falls in a garden bed, you're probably not even going to notice. It'll just create more debris for the garden, which will just create more fertilizer for your garden, really, that natural fertilizer, which is just plant materials falling to the ground. What's cool about the Gaura is it leaves out pretty early, slash it might be semi-evergreen. I will say I see the leaves so early that I often ask myself, wait, were those leaves there all winter? Or am I just, like, are they just so early that it seems like they were there all winter? So what's cool is not only do the stems turn red, but some of the leaves turn red in the fall too. So whenever it's like midsummer, you're going to see like the green and the white, the green stems and the white flowers. But as late summer and early fall come, you're going to see just like mostly a mist of red stems. That's really what you're going to see. And to me, it goes really well with the seed pods of the partridge pea because they're kind of like a brown, but they're like a vibrant brown. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got something out of it. I really love this series of just showing plant combinations that I have in my garden that I think are just really cool and just work really well together. And if you have a plant combination you want to talk about in the comments, leave that down below and let us know what native plant combinations you're creating in your garden. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys! You all requested it, and it's finally here. Reduce Your Lawn shirts are now available in my brand new merch shop. Thanks so much for supporting the wildlife habitat we're creating. To support the channel, like the video, comment, and subscribe. You can also support my work by buying art from me at macylu.com. Thanks for watching!